Okay, good morning, everybody. Bill Lester here with Hernando County Extension Service, and welcome to today's virtual plant clinic. I'm here with my regular co-host, Lilly Browning. Good morning, Lilly.
Good morning, everybody.
So we really don't have we don't have a guest speaker today. I'm trying to line up some people for in the future. Next week, we're going to have somebody, Vanessa, who is the extension agent from down in Miami, is going to be here. So if you have any tropical fruit questions today, you may want to save them for next week because Vanessa will be here and she works with all those different South Florida tropical fruits, coconut palms, avocados, mangoes, all those things day in and day out with commercial growers down there. And she also works with the landscape professionals down there, the people who raise landscape plants. A lot of the big nurseries in Florida are all down there, Homestead, Miami area. So she's going to be here next week. But today is just me and Lilly and all of you. So any questions that you might have? I see that we're not completely alone. Wendy is here. Good morning, Wendy. How are you?
So, everybody, I know Wendy was with me yesterday in my class I had on, so you're at the nursery. And at one point I had about 99 people joining me. So if I was unable to get to your question there, you might want to bring it back up here as well.
Yeah, so if Lilly snubbed you yesterday because you're just one of 99, feel free to go ahead and ask your question today. So,
well, Bill wasn't there to help me run the class and control things and mute all and all of that. And
yeah, I was on Zoom meetings all day long. So,
good morning, Jack.
Look, we have a question already here from Wendy. Something is eating her canna lily. So I know what it is. Lilly, do you know what that would be?
If I were to guess, first of all, I love when people misspell the flower the way I spell my name. That's much better than the other way around. But if I were to guess, I'd say a lover grasshopper, probably. Maybe somewhere. If it's lower, maybe it's a bunny or something.
That could be. And lover grasshoppers do feed on different types of lilies. They really, really like amaryllis. They'll feed on crinum lilies. They'll feed on canna lilies a little bit.
Bulb plants. They seem to love those.
But canna lilies they have a problem with two different kinds of caterpillars. And that's the reason why we really don't raise them and sell them at the Master Gardener Nursery anymore. Cannas became too big of a problem, keeping them healthy and looking good in the summer. Canna lilies could have either the greater canna lily leaf roller or the lesser canna lily leaf roller. And they're both small caterpillars. And what they do is they feed on the leaves of that canna lily, and they'll take the leaf and they'll roll it over on top of themselves. So if you look at the leaf, it's going to look chewed up. You have to take it and kind of open it up, and surprise, you'll see a caterpillar inside.
That's their protection mechanism? Is that...
Yes. So some caterpillars are called leaf rollers, and that's what they do. They roll that leaf over on top of them to make a little protected home. And that makes sense. It stops birds from eating them and other predators, keeps them a little bit safer. But canna lilies, it's very, very common to get caterpillars on them during the summer.
Probably cooler, too.
It is. It does help regulate the temperature, keeps them a little drier.
What can you do about them?
For any kind of caterpillar problem, you can either hand pick them off. So if you only have a couple cannas and a couple caterpillars on there, it's so much easier just to unroll the leaf, pick the caterpillar off, and throw it over the fence. Or the best spray control for that would be something called BT, or Bacillus thuringiensis, and that is available at the big box stores and lawn and garden centers, and definitely online. I'm pretty sure you can even order that through Amazon. It's going to be sold under trade names of Thuricide, Dipel, Organic Caterpillar Killer, things like that.
But be careful, because all your butterflies are caterpillars.
Exactly. If you spray that and it drifts onto your milkweeds or another plant where you're actually trying to raise caterpillars, it's going to injure those also.
Okay, Carol's just teasing us. Did you
Okay. Yeah. Let's go to back what Carol Ann says. She's up there in Western New York. The leaves are changing colors and mums everywhere. Well, technically, it is a little bit cooler here. I noticed it about 2 degrees chillier yesterday morning.
Yeah, it dipped a little bit below 70 in the morning. So
that first day where it's 69 or 68, you really notice it. I go outside to let the dogs out in the morning. It's like, brr, it's chilly out here. I need a jacket.
Well, you're not chasing me too much because in mid-October, I'm going to Pennsylvania for a week or so. So I get to see grandkids and leaves.
That should be a very nice time of year up there.
Yeah. I think I read the peak where I'm going to be in Western Pennsylvania is like around the 19th, and I'll be there then.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you'll have to post some pictures of the changing leaves.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Wendy said she doesn't see caterpillars, but the damage just occurred. So, yeah, if you have a plant and you have some kind of damage, it's very, very important that you start with just examining it very, very closely. You're going to need to, if leaves are rolled up, you need to unroll the leaves and see what may be hiding in there. It may be a spider, so be careful. But if it's a caterpillar or a beetle or some other insect, then you're going to figure out what the problem is. You need to turn leaves over and look at the underside. A lot of times insect pests can be very, very tiny, and they're on the bottom of the leaf. They can hide pretty well. So you have to be diligent and search long and hard.
Are they going to cause any catastrophic damage to the canna lilies?
Generally, no. They don't kill the canna lilies. They do make them a little
unsightly.
They don't look very good. The leaves will start to look very ragged. And if you have several caterpillars on there, like I said, they don't kill the plant, but they make it look pretty bad. So kind of unsightly.
And remind me never to buy a house next door to you. Your answer is always throw it over the fence.
Well, that's the best advice. And see here, that's going to work perfect for Wendy because she doesn't kill buggies. So just throw it over the fence into your neighbor's yard. Don't drive them over to Lily's yard and toss them in her yard.
We'll just join all the others that are here.
So we got another question here. Cheryl's asking, I have reddish purple spots on my ixora shrubs. Any idea what I can do to resolve? So, Lily, are you familiar with ixoras? You don't have any, do you?
No, I don't have any. I mean, I know what they are. I know, depending on where she is, sometimes they don't always do that well up here in 9A. They need a little bit 9B or further south.
Yeah.
Usually. I mean, they sell them in the stores. I saw them. That's kind of one of my, yesterday I had, so you're in the nursery and be careful what you're buying. They're there and they can make it, but they seem to just suffer a little here. They're great on the East Coast, I think.
Yeah, they don't always warn you at the big box stores because they have all these beautiful plants, the crotons, the ixoras, things that can grow here. The only problem is they're a little bit better adapted for a little bit further south of here. So right here in Hernando County, you're kind of pushing the very edge.
Also, I think they're like a low pH, like an azalea does.
Yes, ixoras like acidic soil. So ixoras are like gardenias, azaleas, blueberries. You have to have naturally fairly acidic soil for them to thrive and do really well. If you have really, really high pH, your ixoras are probably never going to do very well just because of the soil.
And if they're right next to the house and you have a, most of us have block houses here in Florida, those blocks are leaching even more lime into the soil right there. So if they're right next to the house, that could be an issue as well.
Yes, right up, the flower beds right up against your house tend to be slightly higher pH soil. But if you have reddish purple spots on an ixora, Chances are, my guess is that's a fungal disease that's called Cercospora leaf spot, because it makes distinctive either purplish spots or the very edge of the leaf spot is a little bit purplish. And that's pretty normal this time of year because fungal leaf spots really like it when it's warm and it's very, very humid and it rains a lot and the leaves are wet all day and all night. And that is what the weather has been like here for several months. So we're starting to see at the office pretty much every plant imaginable. Trees, viburnums, shrubs, things that normally never get leaf spots are getting leaf spots. And that's only because the weather has been absolutely perfect for it. As the weather changes and we go into fall, you're going to have far fewer problems with that. So if you do have something like an ixora with spotted leaves, you probably want to remove the leaves and then very carefully put them in your trash. Because if you let those leaves fall and lay on the ground, they're going to decay, but the fungal spores are going to stay in the soil. And next year, when the weather starts to warm up again, you're going to have the same problem. So one thing you could do to kind of help reduce the amount of problems you have in the future is take the affected leaves, pinch them off, carefully throw them in the trash and get rid of them. And hopefully you're going to have fewer problems in the future. But most plants, if you're having a problem with fungal leaf spots, the disease pressure is going to drop off pretty soon here. As soon as the weather cools, it stops. And it seems like it totally stopped raining all of a sudden this week. Yeah. All of a sudden it's sunny and dry, no rain. So,
well, the disease triangle that makes any disease on any living thing live, right, is you need your susceptible host, your virulent pathogen, and what have I forgotten? Oh, the favorable environment.
Yes.
So the favorable environment is changing a little this week unless the rains start up. But as Bill said, you got to also make sure you get rid of that pathogen that is in the leaves, get it far away from the plant. So therefore, any of those three things that you break in that triangle should break the disease cycle.
Exactly. It helps to reduce your problems. And there are fungicides that are labeled to be used on ornamental plants, other fungicides you could use on edible plants. But fungicides help, but they're only kind of one piece of the solution. You want to take as many different steps as you can to help avoid the problems, and it's so much easier than spending money on fungicides and trying to fix it after the fact. So Kyle looks like he has a problem with his peppers. They have leaves drooping and falling. I have peppers in my garden out in the backyard, and I've had them since spring. So they've been here over the summer, and they took a beating this summer, and they look really ragged at this point. I have I have leaf drooping. I'm starting to have a little touch of fungal problems. I think I may have a root issue also. So you may have a problem with nematodes. And all summer long, they've been damaging the roots of the plants, and now the plants are getting weaker and weaker. When summer ends and we start to go into fall, like we are right now, a lot of times, if you've been able to keep a pepper plant alive over the summer, all of a sudden it will magically perk back up and grow and flower, and you're going to get another flush of peppers off of it. But if it has long-term problems like nematodes that have badly damaged the roots or some other kind of root problem, they may continue to decline and they're going to die fairly shortly here. Really, the only way you could tell if you had a problem with the roots is to pull the plant up. And obviously, if you pull it out of the ground, it's kind of difficult to put it back in the ground and make everything right again. So you and I may very well have a root problem with our peppers. I'm pretty sure that's what I have on at least a few of them. And this isn't a new garden spot for me, so I don't know if I naturally have a nematode problem or not. Kyle, I don't know if you're growing yours in a garden spot outdoors where you've had nematode problems in the past. So they can be a problem with peppers. So your peppers are either going to perk up and start to look good and flower and get more peppers, or they're going to die pretty soon. And mine are going to do the exact same thing. and it's really hard for me to say exactly which way they're going to go. So Lily, here's one kind of for you of camphor trees. So Jacqueline has lots of camphor trees on her property that were already there and established. And I know in my neighborhood, I drive through a subdivision going to and from home every day, and there are a lot of large camphor trees in those neighborhoods. Are they native, and are they host plant for any butterflies?
Let me start with the last question. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up, but probably not. I would say not, because the camphor, has such medicinal value. I would think that would act more as a repellent, to some butterflies, but that's just me guessing. The first question, are they native? I have very bad news for you, Jacqueline. Not only are they not native, they are considered an invasive exotic.
And Wendy knew that also. So Wendy,
yes. What happened? They're one of the trees. The history of the camphor tree is they're one of the trees that we brought here ornamentally on purpose, and people love them. I mean, they get big and huge and look like old oak trees and are fabulous. And have that. You crush up the leaves, you can smell that, like the camphophenique kind of. It is used.
Smells like this.
Yes, but also if you have them, you realize you're also mowing over thousands of baby little camphor trees all the time. And not only that, the berries, the birds take them and they may redeposit them on your driveway if you have purple splotches all over your driveway, but they'll probably take them and put them in an undeveloped lot, where they can end up displacing some of our native trees and plants and causing a lot of ecological issues. The history behind it is it used to be you were really someone if you could afford one. At Chinsigat Conservation Center, not the Chinsigat Manor House. They're close to each other, but those are two different places. At the Conservation Center, there's only remnants of an old house that used to be there. And one of the remnants is pretty much an old dead stump of a camphor tree that they had in front of their house because they wanted to show it off, because they had it shipped from Asia, and then someone had to go down in a wagon to the port of Tampa to bring it up to them and plant it. So that was a status symbol. And, you've made it if you can have this exotic was a good thing, tree in your yard. Well, what happened was, you bring them out of their natural territory. And I always say there are no bad plants. The plants didn't do this. Normally we did it. We take it out of their territory where they had checks and balances, and part of nature kept it in control. And nothing has developed here to do that. So therefore, that's how an invasive exotic, how it comes to be. And camphor trees are one of those things. They do grow large quickly, which makes them rather weak. So if you have a lot, you want to consider storm situations. And I would suggest having an arborist come and check them out. I mean, it might be beyond your budget or your desire to take them if you have a whole lot of them in your yard. I don't think you can buy one anymore, can you, Bill? They're federally regulated, or statewide regulated anyway.
I'm not really positive. I've honestly never seen them offered for sale at a nursery, but I'm not sure if there's actual restrictions barring that.
Right.
There may very well be.
So I'm not telling you run out and get rid of them. That's totally, completely up to you, because it's your yard and it sounds like they're very well established. But I would definitely have an arborist come and check out, weak areas and branches and things that could fall during a storm.
Yes, because it seems like they always develop multiple trunks also.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be very careful with that, because if you have a camphor tree with 6 main trunks, they can very easily, in a storm, split and one huge piece of the tree falls over. So you really want to contact a certified arborist to come and physically look at it.
There used to be a very big one in the parking lot to our dentist, Bill, the dentist that we both go to. You probably hadn't been there since the tree was there, but you can see kind of where it was. You still have to drive around that big old camphor tree, and an arborist that we both know and love took it down, and it was hollow, completely hollow in the middle. So
yeah, trees are funny. They may look fine on the outside, but you need to have an arborist check them, and they tap on the trunk, and they know exactly how to do it and what to look for and listen for. A lot of times the tree could get a little bit of damage and it gets rot in the inside, and it's hollow or rotted inside, and you never know until we have an afternoon thunderstorm or tropical storm or hurricane, and all of a sudden it's on your roof or on the neighbor's roof or in a parking lot. So for large trees, it's definitely worth
the
investment to have an arborist.
They're wonderful for shade. They're wonderful to give you that big mature look pretty quickly, but like I said, fast growing means weak. But I've had many people tell me, well, I've moved to Florida and I don't have 40 years to wait for a mature oak tree. So, I've heard both sides of it, but you do need to be careful.
Okay, here's another question that's a little bit different from Valeria. How do you prevent spots and leaf drop on zinnias?
That's a plant pathologist question.
I know zinnias get, old varieties of zinnias get powdery mildew, which is a disease that it looks like a kind of white dusting of powder on the leaves. There's a lot of newer varieties of zinnias that are powdery mildew resistant or tolerant, but zinnias can get several different types of fungi. Obviously, like we said earlier, it's worse during the part of summer where it's very warm, humid, wet all day and all night, 100% humidity all day and all night. So hopefully soon the disease pressure is going to drop off. You could try using a fungicide on your zinnias. What fungicides do is they don't fix the spotted leaves, but they do protect the new growth and the new leaves from getting the spots. So there are fungicides that are labeled for zinnias and ornamental plants like that.
Are they on an irrigation system? Because if they're getting splashed by supplemental irrigation, that could be an issue as well. When you get them watered, you want to water only the bottom of the bed there.
Yeah, the problem is in summer, you're going to get
rain is going to do that. Yeah,
rainstorms.
Right.
So mulching the plants helps to keep the soil off of them, because when soil gets splashed up onto a plant's leaf, a lot of times that soil is just naturally going to have fungal spores and all kinds of other stuff in it. So a lot of times that's where the disease actually comes from. But other diseases, the spores are just all around us. They just blow in the air. So you can't, unless you put your plants in like a little bubble or something, you can't completely protect them from diseases. They're all around us.
Zinnias are they're going to be going down soon, I think.
Yeah, zinnias are going to be, as we get into cooler weather, they're going to be declining. You may want to think about pansies, petunias, and snapdragons. Those are the big three for winter. So if you plant them now in Central Florida, they'll take the cold. If we get some cold weather or even a frost, petunias, pansies, and snapdragons tolerate that just fine. Mm-hmm. A lot of your other more warm season bedding plants would probably freeze and die if we have a freeze or a frost. So we got a question about, where would you suggest I plant an elderberry bush in my yard and when? I'm in Pinellas County. You should be able to put it in pretty much any time.
Yeah, especially in Pinellas County, yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing that I kind of know about elderberry bushes is they like it a little bit damp. So if you have a damp spot in your yard, it's going to be happier there. If you have a very high, dry, sandy yard, you're probably going to have to keep a little bit closer eye on the irrigation for it. Because they'll grow wild and naturally in roadside ditches because they like the extra water.
Mm-hmm. She wants some wine in her future.
And Crossandra leaves are turning reddish. Does that indicate a problem? Also, should they be deadheaded?
I wish I had my annual publication about annuals to know when they should be growing.
I'm really no expert on specifically Crossandras. I don't know if they're naturally going to lose their leaves once we get into fall and winter. I know that with any kind of flowering plant, it does help to deadhead them. And what that is that's cutting off the spent flowers and spent blooms to encourage the plant to grow more and flower more. So that can work with bedding plants, with even flowering shrubs. You don't have to do it, because if you have, let's say, a large bed out front of zinnias, going out there snipping off all those spent flowers is a lot of work. If you don't want to snip the flowers off, you don't have to, but a lot of times removing them is going to force the plant or encourage the plant to make more flowers. But like I said, it sounds like an awful lot of work to me. I honestly don't really deadhead anything in my yard. If my hedges and everything else get trimmed once a year, they're lucky. So
I used to deadhead my roses, but my knockout roses, but they only lasted about a good decade. Now they're gone. So
yeah, I have a hibiscus out front, and it blooms. It has the single red blooms, and boy, it should have been trimmed back about 2 years ago. I need to get on that pretty soon. I never bother removing blooms or doing anything with it, really, and it flowers just fine on its own when it wants to. So Carol says, I have a peach trumpet plant about 6 feet tall. I noticed where the spent flowers drop, it's killing my St. Augustine grass. Is this normal? If you have, and that's kind of that's not really a major problem, but if you have a plant and you have St. Augustine grass or Bahia grass up right next to the area where it is, anything that falls off, whether it be leaves, flowers, spent flowers, whatever's laying on the grass could kill the grass in that one little spot. There's really nothing in a peach trumpet plant that's going to be poisonous to your grass or spread.
Is that what the kids would lie under and get high?
I'm thinking this could be either what we would call an angel trumpet, which is that, or what is the one, and it generally gets yellow flowers, alamandas.
Oh, okay.
Because alamandas get a similar kind of flower. It's a large trumpet-shaped flower. Yeah. Very, very pretty, kind of a floppy, not really a vine, but just kind of floppy plant. But either one, if it starts dropping flowers on your grass, you probably just want to pick them up or rake them up. Because if you have trees that drop a lot of leaves on your lawn, it helps to do something about them. A lot of times just grinding it up with your lawnmower is going to grind the leaves up into little small pieces so they're going to decompose. That's a bonus because it adds organic matter to your lawn, which is always a good thing. So running over the flowers with your lawnmower is going to grind them up into small enough pieces they'll decompose. Or you can pick them up.
It could be that area of your St. Augustine grass is in too much shade. So it's not the leaves killing it, it's that there's not enough sun for it.
That's a good point, because no matter all the different types of turf grasses we have, whether it's St. Augustine, Bahia, zoysia, whatever it might be, do not do well in heavy shade. So the shadier it is, the worse your lawn is going to look. And if you have a really, really, really shady lawn yard where it's just literally dark when you walk out there, there's really not much point trying to grow turf grass because it will not last for long. So we got a question here from Phyllis on figs that are going to grow well in Zone 9. And I went ahead and looked up, and I'll go ahead and post that in the comments here.
The answer is probably. That's the answer, right, Bill?
Exactly. Yes, you can't grow figs here in Central Florida.
Brown turkey figs?
Figs can do well here in Central Florida. I just posted a link to a University of Florida fact sheet on figs that tells you all the basics, and it has a list of all the different varieties that are going to do well here. One thing to remember about figs, and this pretty much applies to everybody who has figs, they will almost always get a disease by late summer called fig rust. So the leaves are going to get brown spots, they're going to get kind of brown, they're going to curl up, and they're going to fall off early from a fungus on them that's called fig rust. If you turn the leaf over, you can take your finger and actually wipe it off. That's kind of common with rusts. They kind of come off with your finger if you try rubbing on it. So figs are almost always going to need some kind of fungicide on them, especially by late summer. Because even though figs drop their leaves in the fall and the plants are bare over the winter, you don't want the leaves to fall off too early, because over the years, the plant's just going to get weaker and weaker and weaker and decline and die. So you want to use a fungicide on figs. You need to use a fungicide that's labeled to be used on figs. You need to use that starting in the middle of summer, and you want those leaves to stay on and look green and healthy until they naturally fall off, because winter's here, and then your figs can do well. And I know some people, figs can be a little tough to grow, but I know some people that do very well with figs.
Oh, yeah. We used to have people bring them into the extension office. There was one there at the extension office, and we would go and pick them. I know they do have nematode issues. And what I told you about the ixora is the opposite of the fig tree. I mean, you don't want it too close to your house because of the roots and everything, but kind of close to your house, because actually the higher pH discourages the nematodes in a fig tree. So that doesn't mean you want to pour, something to try and make your soil higher in pH, because ours is already mid to high as it is. So
yeah, and that really depends on your yard, and you really have to have a soil test done to say what your pH is. But something that you can do with figs is, if you get a very large container, they make very good container plants. But you have to get something large, like one of those half whiskey barrels or larger, and it could do well in that, as long as you control that rust. So here's a question from Jacqueline. The woodpeckers and catbirds in winter eat all the berries. Now I see how they are spreading this invasive everywhere. This must go back to the camphor tree.
It is the camphor tree, yeah.
Okay. There's no way I can remove all these trees. I'm disappointed to hear this. Yeah, unfortunately, birds do eat the berries off of camphors, and that's how camphors pop up and end up in wooded areas and state parks and federal parks and places where we don't want them to be. They do spread fairly well from those little berries, helped along by the birds. So we discourage people from deliberately planting them.
Right.
But they do grow very large, and I can understand that getting a very large tree, whether it's camphor or an oak or whatever it might be, can be very, very expensive. So that's one of the reasons why you may want to contact an arborist and have them check
your evaluation. And he might just prune them for you.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to get rid of them, but prune them for storm safety.
Yeah, so you really want to try to keep your trees healthy, because if you ignore them and they get unhealthy and start to have problems, and now you're shopping for somebody to remove it, you may have a bad case of sticker shock when you start getting quotes on removing a large tree.
And speaking of shade and grass, you're not really going to have much grass under those camphor trees because of the shade they produce. But also, remember I mentioned the chemicals, because they're a medicinal value. They also are what we call allelopathic, which means they emit a chemical that is almost acts as an herbicide, so that under it can grow billions of baby camphor trees, and it doesn't let anything else grow there too. So
exactly. So here's another comment. Somebody has 2 magnolias that look very sick. The arborist is coming soon. We get a lot of questions on trees, and people email us pictures, and sometimes we can answer your question or give you some insight, or if nothing else, help figure out what kind of tree you have from pictures. But a lot of times you really need to have a professional come to your house and get up close and personal and actually look at and examine that tree to tell you for sure what your situation is. And we really can't guarantee one way or another from a phone call or a picture whether the tree is safe or not. So for a safety check, you have to have an arborist actually come to your house.
Certified arborist, and go to something called Google, the International Society of Arboriculture. Can you write that in the comments? Lilly?
Sure.
And if you Google that, and yes, it's an international society, but they have a really cool website where with a search engine that you can put in your town or your zip code, and it will show, and you can choose, I want one within 25 miles of me or whatever. And however many are certified will be there. In our area, we only really have about 6, don't we, Bill? Last time I looked.
Yes, we do have a list of everybody who's certified at our office. So if you call our office, we can give you information on local Hernando County arborists. So I went ahead and put that. I think I spelled it correctly. I put that in the comments.
Yeah. Google doesn't know the word arboriculture. It'll always tell you it's wrong, but that's right.
Okay, we have a question here that I don't know the answer to off the top of my head from Sue from Tampa Bay, who's a master gardener down there for 22 years. Hopefully you're a master gardener in Hillsborough County, because I know you're coordinator down there. Specializing in growing organic produce, and she's trying to grow fava beans, and it grows nice plants, but they never produce beans. Is it the wrong climate?
They're from Baker County. Is that North Florida?
No, Baker Creek is a seed company.
Baker Creek. Oh,
I'm familiar with that.
Okay. Oh, she's in Pinellas.
Yeah.
Not Hillsborough. She's in Pinellas. So, you know that horde agent too, as well, don't you?
I'm not too sure who's in Pinellas County. I do know who's in Hillsborough County, but we all work well together. So yeah. I would have to look up fava beans. So if you want to email me, there is my email, wlester@ufl.edu. I'm not sure off the top of my head what time of year fava beans need to be planted and grown. I'm not sure if they're a little bit on the tropical side or non-tropical side. But it's very important that you grow any kind of vegetables at the right time of year here to have the most success with them, to have them have the fewest insect and disease problems and flower properly and get those fava beans for you. So if you want to shoot me an email, I can look that up and try to help you out with that.
Okay. BJ is listening, and I believe she's telling us the Pinellas County agent is Theresa Glover Badurek.
Okay, I know Theresa, but I wasn't sure if she was the master gardener coordinator there or not. And there's Lily's email also. So if you have any really complicated questions, shoot her an email, and she's more than happy to research it and get back with you there.
If you are listening from Citrus County, your horticulture agent and extension director is BJ Jarvis, and she's listening in too. So, you know, she might be able to answer some Citrus County questions for us.
Exactly, because here on Facebook, it gets a little confusing sometimes. People will ask, we've had people start asking questions on mangoes and avocados, and I'm thinking, but they don't do really well here in Hernando County. Where do you live? And it turns out they live in Florida or somewhere else in Florida. So sometimes it really helps if you tell us where you live also, because all these different trees and plants and vegetables It really depends on where you live about how well they're going to do. Obviously, mangoes are probably not going to do well in Citrus County.
Right.
You can try them, and if you can keep them warm during the winter, you can grow them, but it's going to be a certain amount of work. You need to know that going into it. But
sure. You need to know your experiment.
Timing totally depends on where you live.
You need to know you're experimenting. If you're in Hernando, even half of Pasco on up and are in 9A, I encourage you, if you want to, experiment with like 9B type plants, because it is getting warmer. But know that you're experimenting, and maybe have them in those big pots where you can drag them in the garage or something like that. Don't spend a whole lot of money on an experiment plant. That's what I'm telling you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I live in Hernando County, and I am going to start some papayas. I'm planning on experimenting with mangoes, and I'd really like to try raising some dragon fruit. But I know that during the winter, if we get some really cold nights, I'm going to have to go out there and do whatever I have to do to keep them warm and keep them from dying. All summer long, they're perfectly happy here. When it's hot and humid and it rains every day and it doesn't get below 70 at night, they're perfectly happy growing here. It's just those couple of cold nights during the winter. So if you can get beyond that, no matter where you live, you may be successful with them. And I tell people, experiment. Don't be afraid to try. And if you're successful with it, make sure you come on here and say, you know, you said I couldn't grow mangoes in Citrus County, and I did. And here's my mangoes. Here's the pictures. Here's the proof. That's great. We love to hear things like that. And we love to hear things like from Heather about doing these streams is such a good resource. And I really like your little icon there too. So. So here's another question from, I think this goes back to the magnolia questions. The one had all its leaves shrivel and drop right after setting seed. The other looks fine. Magnolias are generally very hardy trees, and magnolias can support scales and other insects and a lot of different things and still be perfectly healthy and flower and look good. But there are a couple of specific problems magnolias can have that you need to have somebody come and actually look at them to figure out what is wrong. There is a magnolia stem borer, and I believe it's a caterpillar, and it drills into the trunk, maybe knee-high down to ground level, and will do that kind of year after year for a couple years, and really reduce the health of the magnolia where it's going to eventually die from it. That's the kind of thing that if you do have a problem with that, an arborist or somebody needs to come and actually specifically look at it. So I think we got some other.
Yes, you have one from Debra Sue. Debra Sue has an interesting question about keeping a loquat tree where she can reach it and handle it.
Okay, we'll shoot right down here to that one. This is something I honestly don't see too many people do with loquats, but commercial growers do try very hard to keep their fruit trees at a certain height. So I know for a fact that commercial growers who grow peaches, plums, nectarines, even sometimes citrus, prune the trees and try to keep them reasonably short, because when they pick the fruit, they don't want to be up there on ladders, because what happens when you put up a ladder and you're climbing up a tree trying to pick fruit? What might happen? Lily?
I'm sorry, I was reading.
What could happen to you if you have to put up a ladder and climb it to pick fruit off of a tree?
You could fall off of it.
Exactly. You could fall off on it and land on your head. And growers don't want their employees doing that. They don't want that happening to them. So peaches, plums, a lot of other trees are pruned to be about 6 to 8 feet tall to keep them a reasonable height. You could prune a loquat to keep it short, but you probably want to start pruning it when it's young. So if you have a loquat in your yard and it's already 20 feet tall, pruning it back to 6 feet tall is going to be a big shock for it. If you have a little loquat and it's maybe 6 feet tall, you plant it in your yard. As it grows, if you keep pruning it back to keep it in a fairly small size, that will work just fine. The best time to do the trimming, let's see, for loquats would be probably when the fruit finishes up in the late winter, early spring. So the fruit on a loquat, if it blooms in the fall and then the fruit is ready and you're going to pick it in the spring, after you're done picking all the fruit, or it's fallen off onto the ground, or the birds have eaten it, whatever you allow to happen with the fruit would probably be a good time to prune it back. So I've never really heard about a homeowner trying to do that with a loquat, but I'm sure that would work well. It's done with a lot of other fruit trees. Some things in South Florida are heavily trimmed once a year, because otherwise they become huge, and now it's really, really difficult to pick that fruit.
Are there any dwarf varieties of loquats?
Not that I know of. I looked up once before, and we have about 20 different named varieties of loquat, believe it or not. I always used to think loquats were loquats, but we have a whole bunch of different varieties here, and that have actual names. And I know every March, I think, there is a loquat festival in Newport Richey. Don't quote me on that, but you can go there and you can buy different loquat trees.
There's a festival in Dade City. That's what you're thinking of.
No, that's the Kumquat Festival.
Yes.
In Dade City. There is a loquat festival, and I think it's in either Port Richey or Newport Richey, and I believe it's normally in March.
BJ would know that too. She lives in Pasco.
You have a master gardener that's very involved with that.
Yeah. You have Theresa, the master gardener coordinator in Pinellas County, answering your fava bean question.
Okay, well, good morning, Theresa. Sorry, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here getting in trouble on my own Facebook presentation here. Sorry, I couldn't remember if you or somebody else was the master gardener coordinator in Pinellas County. I know I work a lot with Nicole, who's over in Hillsborough County right next door. So thankfully, we have people that are a lot more knowledgeable than I am on these specific things, or they had the time to go and double check the literature about different things. But fava beans aren't going to be well suited to our climate. They're a cool season crop and long too. They don't thrive in Florida gardens. They need about 4 or 5 months of cool season growing time. So that's going to be tough here, even tougher south of Hernando County. I assume the fava beans kind of fall in the same general neighborhood as Brussels sprouts, which I know you can grow here in Hernando County, but it has to be a long, cool winter for them to do well. If it's a warm winter, they're not going to do well. And another one that I know needs a long, cool winter to do really, really well is going to be cauliflower. Because when we have one of those winters where the temperature keeps bouncing up into the 80s and back down, up in the 80s and back down, you can grow cauliflower, but the head is going to be very, very small, sometimes only the size of a quarter. And that's something that's called buttoning. So there are some vegetables that in theory can grow here in general central Florida, but it has to be one of those cold winters to do well. A warm winter is not going to do well. So obviously fava beans kind of fall into that group. Thank you so much, Theresa. Theresa, get a hold of me if you want to be one of my guest hosts on here one week. We'd love to have you. So and BJ, I'm going to get a hold of you, and you have been officially kind of drafted to be my guest host on here also. So that's kind of the price you have to pay for popping on here. I'm going to drag you on and help you host one of these.
BJ will be great. She would be great on
Sure, BJ will be fine because we do get questions from all around Hernando County and Citrus County. And you know, it's funny because Citrus and Hernando County are right next door to each other, and so is Pasco. And I don't have to drive but an hour to get down there to Pinellas County and some of the beaches down there. But the growing conditions and exactly what is going to do really, really well in your yard does vary a little bit between Citrus and Hernando and Pasco and Pinellas and Hillsborough. So there are little fine-tuned things, all depending on exactly where you live.
I tell people all the time, what I hear from folks is, but my friend in Newport Richey. But my friend in Newport Richey can grow a poinciana tree. But my friend in Newport Richey can grow this and grow that. Well, they're on the coast. They're 9B. There's, it's just different, even though we think it's fairly close by. Bill and I know the difference between Spring Hill and Brooksville, and that's within our county. One is an Okamic area. The other is, a Sandhill area, and they are totally different.
Yeah, because we get questions and a few things like crotons and cardboard palms, even just down in Pinellas County, they're going to do great. And they very, very rarely get damaged by cold weather. Because if you're in Pinellas, and especially if you're very, very close to the water, you're always going to be a tiny bit warmer. Those kind of things can grow well here in Hernando County. But I used to have a neighbor, the last house we lived in Spring Hill. They lived right across the street, and they had crotons in their front yard. Every year, they would freeze at least one night during the winter and die. And every spring, they bought more crotons and planted them. Mm-hmm. So they treated them like an annual. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. That worked very well. They had beautiful crotons out in front of their house. But I know down in Pinellas County, their crotons probably never die. They get a lot larger. They look great. So little fine-tuned kind of questions.
I usually see them in pots here, so then people drag them in when they're going to have a freeze.
Yeah, if you're able to grow something in a pot and drag it in your garage or even by your swimming pool in your lanai, if you keep it just a little bit warmer, that really, really helps. So I am going to write down, get in touch with Theresa and get in touch with BJ, because now they know that we're here and how easy it is, and we will have them on to help answer some questions also.
They haven't learned the value of not being seen.
That's fine. And like I said, we get questions from all over the state on here, and on occasion it'll be something like fava beans, and I'm just not that proficient at, but we'll always find the answer for people one way or another. Okay, we got some more updates and information on that Loquat Festival. I knew that it was normally held in March because loquats flower in the fall, so they should be flowering right around now. Either they just flowered or that's coming up, and the fruit develops over the winter and it's ready to be picked in the spring, generally in March in most areas. So it makes sense to have that Loquat Festival in March, but it's been postponed due to the pandemic. So I know that's happened to a lot of our fairs and festivals and things. They've had to be postponed. So Theresa, when we get you here on Facebook, you'll be seen. Don't worry about that. And recorded also.
Yes.
These presentations are all automatically recorded on our YouTube channel. And also they are automatically recorded on our Facebook page because it's technically a Facebook Live presentation. So if any of you joined us late, you didn't catch something when it happened live, you can go back and rewatch it if you like. So more updates here on the Loquat Festival.
I love when the chats, they end up talking to each other because it takes a lot of pressure off of us. They help each other out there.
It does, yeah. I mean, there's some days where we can pretty much just kind of let it run, and it moderates itself, and people answer each other's questions. And so, what time is it getting to be? Oh, it's almost 11 o'clock. And I don't see any other really pressing questions on here. If anybody has a last minute question you want to squeeze in, go ahead and post it now.
I think you should end with that
Let
one.
me tell you, we like these kind of comments. So thank you very much, Wendy.
Let's screen share that one.
Let me screen share. Let me go ahead and screenshot that one, and I'll send it off to my county director so he knows that, you know, we're working hard and people are enjoying it and hopefully getting something out of it also. Because I think a lot of times when somebody asks a question, everybody else is kind of wondering it.
Sure.
And this is a really good way for us to kind of learn from each other and learn those little fine-tuned things about if you live in Pinellas County, this is what you could do. Here in Spring Hill, you could do this. BJ is going to be on in a few weeks. So BJ, if you're still on here, I'm going to get a hold of you and we'll schedule you for a Thursday morning. Don't be afraid. Get a camera, jump right on in here. I can have a number of people on here all at once. So
you have a coneflower question from Melissa.
Okay, let me go back to comments there. So coneflower seeds and how to best propagate. Do they need a season of cold before planting?
I don't think so. They're a native Florida plant, so I wouldn't think they did.
I don't think so either. You need to let those flowers stay on the plant and then die and turn brown and fully mature until they're completely brown, because all the little spikes on them, each one of those is connected to a seed. So if you take those totally dead, brown, totally dry flowers, put them in a paper bag and crunch them up really well, that's going to get the seeds. And then if you store it in a paper bag, that's going to help the freshest. If you store it in a plastic baggie and there's moisture at all, it's really funky and nasty and mildew. You want to keep seeds in plastic baggies. That is not the best way. Paper bag, begin next year, and it's fine.
And I think Rita puts them in like little jars. One of our master gardeners is a native plant person, and she'll get them from that paper bag method that he mentioned, but then she just stores them in open jars so the air can get at them. That's her choice. There are other people who close them up and put them in the refrigerator for a while. It's really a matter of what works best for you in your situation.
Yes, I know that you need to keep them in a very dry spot and reasonably cool.
And don't collect them when they're wet.
Yeah, putting them in your backyard shed is probably not going to be the best place to store them.
No, bring them in the house in the air conditioning. Yeah.
And you can store many seeds or most seeds in the refrigerator, but you don't necessarily have to. So we have more of a thread here on those coneflower seeds. Melissa is in South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, yes, they do. The spent flowers do get prickly and brown. Mm-hmm. So you want to let them fully mature on the plant before you pick them off. And now,
if you can, pick them dry. If you just can't, if you have to pick them when they're a little wet, then you put them on the paper towels and let them dry out too. You know, what you want to avoid is them getting moldy. And you were breaking up. I think you were saying don't put them in a plastic baggie because of the mold situation that could occur.
Yes, if they're still damp at all in a plastic baggie, they're going to get a little moldy.
Yeah.
Now, Wendy wants to know what kind of soil the coneflowers need. They're a native, depending on what variety you're growing, a lot of them are native Florida plants. So they can grow in fairly poor sandy soil.
She might actually be making her soil too rich. They could be like my beach sunflower, which get mad at me when the soil starts getting nice from mulching the bed for a while, and then they move out to some really just sandy, dry area in my yard.
In truth, they do like full sun, so coneflowers are going to do well in full sun. And Sue, I do that with my spent flowers, the blanket flower or Giardia. Yes. Yeah.
They're sugar perennials, so let them be, and they should just drop the seeds and re-sprout, shouldn't they, Bill?
Yes, I know Giardia and sunflower do very, very well at dropping seeds, and if you have a little patch or a little area, they're going to get thicker, and you're going to end up with more and more.
Right.
So sure, you can do that with the blanket also. So Melissa said maybe is her issue east near the beach. I'm not sure how salt tolerant they are. You probably have to look that up. So if you're very, very close to the coast, salt tolerance is something you have to keep in mind for anything you're trying to grow in your yard. So they should not go from flower back into ground once dry. You can, because naturally out in nature, that's what they do. They flower in the summer. It's going to dry up, become very, very dry. Generally in the winter, birds are probably going to eat some of the seeds. The spent flower is going to drop to the ground, and then they're going to sprout and become next spring and summer's plants. So you can replant them out in your garden as soon as they're dry and ready to go. You can start them inside in the late winter, early spring, and have little plants to put in your garden bed in a specific area. Or you could take the seeds outdoors and plant them in the spring. Any one of those is going to work pretty well.
I was just in Brevard County, and I noticed, people who live within feet of the beach still want their St. Augustine lawns and all this. And I don't know, Brevard County, probably someone here can answer me whether or not they have watering restrictions. But the neighborhood I was in didn't seem to be following any. But so they're being irrigated a lot, which for one thing, wildflowers wouldn't like. But being right on the beach there, just the municipal water that you get has that kind of sulfury smell to it. So I'm wondering too, if that's on any kind of irrigation system, maybe wildflowers would not like the irrigation water in those type of situations very close to the beach there.
That may be an issue. And I know people who use reclaimed water, that could be very high in salt. So that's going to have an impact on certain plants. Lots of other plants it really doesn't have an impact on. So that's going to be kind of you have to make sure that the plant in question that you're trying to grow is at least somewhat salt tolerant. Mm-hmm. Many plants are, but many plants are not salt tolerant, so they're not going to do nearly as well. So let's go ahead and once again put Lily's contact information up there. If you have any further questions, you want to get in contact with Lilly directly, there is her email.
That's the best way to reach me in this time of COVID. And I will answer you. It may not be immediately. I might be involved in other things, or I may not know your answer, but I'll get with you. I'll just ask Bill if I don't know. So, or BJ.
Sure. Oh, we pass around emails to each other all the time, and we'll send, we'll get a picture of something, and then we forward it to a couple of the others. It's like, does anybody know what this is? And
yeah.
We always figure it out eventually.
Sure. Theresa says coneflowers are not salt tolerant. That's why you don't see them in the beach neighborhoods, I guess.
Yeah. So if you want to get in contact with our office, here is our phone number. And if you call that number, there's about a 99% chance that you're going to get Theresa on the other end. So you can ask her a question. She can forward it to myself, to Lilly, whatever it might be. Theresa is the greatest at helping people out. And I know for us at the office, she is truly a blessing. So that's our weekly plug for Theresa. Hopefully she's on here.
She runs the extension office in Hernando County.
Exactly. I tell the master gardeners, Theresa knows everything. So if you have a question, she can help you out.
Can you, she said that, I think someone's saying the words that are running across are blocking our emails.
Oh, okay. So you must be on the automatic live closed captioning with Facebook. So my email. Our contact information. or even better, here it is. Here it is scrolling at the very bottom. If you're interested in any of our upcoming classes, or the link or for YouTube on how to follow us on next week's virtual plant clinic, or get information on any of the classes that I have coming up, or Lilly has coming up, or anybody else in our office has coming up, if you go to www.hernandoextension, all one word, .com, there is a full listing of all of our classes right there. Gives you all the information on the days, the times, whether it's going to be on Facebook Live, whether it's going to be on Zoom, whether we're going to record it so that you're able to watch it later on. Everything you're going to need to know, hopefully, is right there. And if you still have
anybody in Pasco County, well, for all of you, but Pasco County might be especially interested. Next week, my Wednesday class, my Wednesday at 10 o'clock class is going to be on fall color, but it is going to be Frank and I will be giving the class. Frank Galdo is the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program Coordinator in Pasco County. Really, really, really smart guy. So I think that's going to be a fun class that him and I will put together. So make sure you join us for that. Just go to Hernando FFL Program Facebook page and you'll find the Zoom link under the events.
Okay, and I think with that, we need to pretty much wrap it up here for today. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. And like I said, we will be back here again next Thursday. Next week, we're going to have a special guest with us here. So save up all your really, really difficult questions. And Theresa, I'm going to get a hold of you later on today, and BJ, both of you. And I'll get a hold of Frank also, and we'll have all of them come back and give some guest appearances here. So maybe one day I'll just be able to go get myself some coffee and let you guys all handle all the questions. Okay, well, thanks again, everybody. I had a great time like always, and we will see you all again next week. Thanks.
Thank you.